All right, folks, we are here on the Sports Talk Nation here on YouTube. Glad to join you tonight, Michael Cohen, along with a very special guest, and that is Doug Rush. Doug, of course, covers the Yankees and everything Major League Baseball, and it's been a busy time, to say the least, with baseball, with the Yankees, and with everything that's going on right now, as we have trades, we have rumors, we have speculation running rampant with the winter meetings. Doug, I'm going to bring you in now. Of course, happy holidays. Welcome back aboard here on the Open Mic program.
Mike, I had an option to do. I could have called into the Mike Francesa Love Fest today on WFAN, but I decided, you know what, Mike's got enough special guests. I'm going to call into Michael Cohen's show because he deserves my attention.
Exactly. Hey, look, and Francesa's taking callers all day tomorrow too, so that's part of it.
Oh, it's going to be the 6-hour love fest for him. But I mean, I'm sure he's going to be embarrassed by it. Oh
no. One thing I'm wondering with Francesa is this. The pressure on whoever's the last caller is. What is that last caller going to? Is that last caller going to just troll him? That's going to be interesting.
I mean, that's got to be historic. I mean, to be the last caller of his 30-year run at WFAN, that's got to be something, to whoever that caller is. I mean, I would treasure that in a way. So
yeah, it'll go down like this. Okay, this is our last caller. Let's go to Bob in Newtown. Bob, I want the Giants to trade Eli Manning to the Jets. Okay, that's not going to be our last caller.
or he'll simply hand wave him off the air, and it'll just be like the old times of Mike and the Mad Dog.
Exactly. But let's be honest. I mean, without Mike Francesa and even the Mad Dog for that matter, I mean, those two guys really were pioneers of everything that's going on. I mean, I remember when I was in college, when we were all in college, I would turn them on. I would have them on in the background during the day. I mean, they've been a big part of our lives and a big part of our sports talk, and one reason why we're doing this to this day.
I mean, we were talking about the winter meetings. For me, being when I was in high school, I remember going on my lunch break, and this is before smartphones and really when the internet was just getting going. And I remember listening to Mike and the Mad Dog break the news of the Yankees signing Jason Giambi and the Yankees signing Mike Messina. And I mean and back then, I mean, you're talking 2000, 2001. I mean, those were big times. And I mean, you'd have to we didn't know until we would have to log on to ESPN or listen to the radio. I mean, how things have changed over the last 16, 17 years since we were in high school and college.
Right. I mean, it's really changed a lot. And then you have the Yes Network, which was a big part of that, giving us basically a television feed of the show for 5.5 hours almost daily. And then, of course, it went over to Fox Sports, and then just disappeared after that, for several different reasons. But, I mean, it's just been an institution. It really has been. And, I know they're bringing in Bart Scott and Craig and Chris, almost said Craig Harton. That would have been hilarious. Chris Carlin and Maggie Gray. I don't know how they're going to do as a group. I mean, 3 people in a booth is tough, but we'll see. It'll be definitely a void, I guess, in a lot of ways without hearing that Long Island accent on the air.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, but we move on in historic fashions, and of course, I guess in some ways to kind of honor New York sports talk for that matter. Talk about what's going on down with the Yankees because it's been interesting right now. Let's just say that. I think Brian Cashman has broke the bank as far as Secret Santa gifts this year for Yankee fans.
I mean, he when he went down to Orlando, he did not come there to just kind of sit around and enjoy the sun and go to Disney World. He came to play, and the fact that there was even a possibility that Giancarlo Stanton was going to come to the Yankees. I thought it was this is like playing fantasy baseball. There's no way. Because, I mean, he wasn't really in need at the time. They had Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez. This lineup was stacked as it was. Mm-hmm. And then the fact that Giancarlo Stanton put the Yankees on the no trade, the teams he would accept the trade to, and then the fact that the Dodgers and the Cubs and the Astros basically said, yeah, we really can't fit you in our budget, and it basically became the Yankees or going to the staying with the Marlins. Mm-hmm. And considering he wanted to run right the hell out of South Beach. It was and Derek Jeter's hands were tied. He had no leverage whatsoever in those negotiations. And it basically became yeah, we're basically, just give you Giancarlo Stanton. We'll take back whatever you want to give us. And voila, just Brian Cashman works more magic. And It's amazing. Like the trades that Brian Cashman makes, they're 9 times out of 10, they're really good for the franchise. And lo and behold, they get Giancarlo Stanton for most of his contract, but their farm system is still intact, and they can make more moves while the winter meetings are still going on.
And that's the thing that really stands out to me because being someone who's not a Yankee fan, a lot of the anti-Yankee fans or non-Yankee fans look at it and said, "Well, it's the rich getting richer." Technically, yes. You bring in an NL MVP, you put him in a lineup with a guy like Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez, Greg Bird if he stays healthy. Yeah, I mean it's a lot of power. I mean it's like team that hit 250 home runs last year. Now you potentially could hit 300 home runs this year. It's a lot of power. I can necessarily understand where a lot of fans are upset about that. But at the same time, the way they were able to do this, it's not costing them anything. In fact, it's even cheaper to bring in Stanton than it was to pay Starlin Castro's contract. You get that off the books. You have the Marlins paying up to $30 million over the remainder of the Stanton contract to kind of take some pressure off the Yankees a little bit. It was 25 per year, now it's down to 22 per year, 22 million per year. That is. I mean, it's just amazing how Brian Cashman just worked out that deal to work perfectly for the finances of the team. They're still going to be under the threshold.
And the amazing thing is, with the Stanton contract and the trades they made this week, with Starlin Castro going, and also the Chase Headley trade sending him to San Diego, they ran the numbers of what the Yankees where they stood as far as their salary cap and where they were at, and they said that all they added was $900,000 in salary, and that's after adding a guy whose contract was at $295 million remaining, and yet their salary cap only went up $900,000. I mean, that's tremendous. I mean, the fact that this is a trade the Yankees almost they had to give to their fan base, because if they had gotten wind that they could have had Giancarlo Stanton for literally nothing and they didn't do it, the backlash on Brian Cashman probably would have been intense. But at the same time, Cashman knows that the team is not only set up to win right now, but also set up to win in the future. He knew that, he wasn't risking the future and not giving up any of the major prospects in the system. So he could also win now and continue to win the future, and at the same time add the National League MVP and add a guy who hit 60 home runs in a season. So it was basically a no-brainer and a win-win for the Yankees and also for Stanton.
I mean, the way he described Stanton, the situation that was going on in Miami, I mean, it was pretty candid. You don't hear a lot of players be as candid as he was talking about what was going on in meetings. He's talking about how he sat with Derek Jeter, and Jeter said they're going to tear the team down and rebuild, and he didn't want to be a part of that. He even called the Marlins being a part of a losing culture, which was just kind of throwing the previous owner under the bus for that matter. But to be that candid about it and to say that the Cardinals and Giants didn't fit what he was looking for, he wanted to go to those 4 teams. Now, I'll say this. I know that last year was a tough year for the Cardinals and the Giants, but neither one of those two franchises are bad franchises. I mean, those 2 teams have represented the National League and the World Series for a better part of the last decade, so he could have been in a good spot going there as well. But he goes to the Yankee team that's loaded, that's ready to rock and roll. You want to, as some people have said, compare it to KD jumping ship, going over to Golden State. Okay, fine, you can do that. I understand that. But he now puts himself in a situation where he is going to be, whether you like it or not, and for those fans there are fans who don't like that, he's going to be in a position to win a championship, period.
I don't think it's that extreme, only because Kevin Durant went to the team that not only beat him in the playoffs, and he also went to a 70-win Warriors team that ultimately blew a 3-1 lead and lost. So, I mean, the Warriors really didn't need Kevin Durant. They would have been in the finals regardless. It's not a guarantee the Yankees, and granted, they were 1 game away from the World Series, but at the same time, the 2017 Yankees were expected to be a 4th-place team just trying to rebuild, and yet they exceed everyone's expectations. And they should be good in 2018, but at the same time, if you have a chance to add a proven commodity in Giancarlo Stanton and basically be a guy that you can sell tickets around, you do it, because I mean, granted, this nucleus now of Judge and Sanchez and Bird and all the young guys they've built, I mean, that's a lot of their focal point. But at the same time, Giancarlo Stanton will help sell out the building every night now. I mean, Judge would have helped in many ways with the Judges chambers and everything they've done in Yankee Stadium now. But people will now show up at Yankee Stadium to see if Giancarlo Stanton's going to hit one 500 feet. And, they're going to see, Stanton and Judge, and they want to see if one of them can knock the ball out of the actual ballpark and onto River Avenue. So, they've, for promotions and for selling tickets and merchandise and everything else, I mean, Giancarlo Stanton's contract will be paid for, given with all the money that the Yankees are now going to be making with the ticket sales and everything else, and people will be showing up at that ballpark. Whereas maybe 2-3 years ago, and they might have been dropping off, with the Jeters and A-Rods and the older core, retiring, and the Giancarlo Stanton will bring a lot more new people and people who maybe faded away. They'll be bringing them back to the ballparks.
It's going to create an interesting dynamic in the city too, because the Mets, who are going through in a lot of ways a rebuild right now and a reshuffling of things with Mickey Callaway in town, and they're going to still making some moves as it is. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's going to create an interesting dynamic where the Mets kind of fade away unless they start doing something to be a little more competitive, and the Yankees are just going to be this forefront and this monster that potentially could win well over 100 games. They still got to get some pitching together as well, but just the thought of those two guys, Judge and Stanton, potentially being guys that could chase 50, 60 home runs in all these small ballparks, especially in the American League East and in Tampa Bay. They might just put holes in the roof in Tampa Bay for that matter. And of course in Baltimore, Camden Yards, and then in Fenway Park to see how far they can get it over the monster. They're going to get a lot of attention everywhere they go.
I mean, a lot of people said this is a move that George Steinbrenner would have made, and it definitely would have been a move that George Steinbrenner would have made, because he was known as the Star Chaser when he was the owner. And Hal Steinbrenner isn't his father, but at the same time his last name is still Steinbrenner, and he's the finance guru. But at the same time, Hal Steinbrenner has seen, he witnessed firsthand 2013, 14, and 16. You're not making much money when you have an empty ballpark in October when you don't make the playoffs. Whereas in 15 and 17, he had a sold-out stadium every single night when the Yankees were in the playoffs. So you want to have those sold-out stadiums. You want to have a chance to keep playing until maybe November 1st. You put the best team out there, and I know the Mets haven't followed that pattern, but Hal still has a little bit of his father's DNA and his willingness to want to win no matter what in him. So, and this trade and signing off on it is clear proof that he is definitely all in to try to win every year.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine what Joe Girardi might be thinking right now? He's seeing the Yankees get Stanton. He's watching Garrett Cole be a possibility. If the Yankees can swing that trade, Manny Machado's name's been mentioned. Not likely to be dealt right now to the Yankees, obviously, but all these names that are being mentioned to the Yankees, he's not going to be a part of it. I can only imagine what he may be thinking right now, sitting in his house.
I mean, Joe got to spend 10 years as the manager. He got to win a World Series. Joe did a lot of his best managing was during the years where they didn't make the playoffs. 2013, I look at that team should have won 70 games with all the injuries, and yet they managed to squeeze out 85 and got to the final week of the year where they were still in playoff contention. I mean, Joe Girardi did as good of a job as anyone could have ever done here with the Yankees, especially kind of like the post-Jeter teams. And you know what? He'll be back managing somewhere probably in 2019. I mean, he's probably disappointed because he loved being the Yankees manager, but at the same time, he's got a family at home. I think he can look back and say, I did the very best job I could. I got a World Series in my second year. I got the Yankees within playoff range every single year. I didn't have a losing season. Joe Girardi did a fantastic job, and he will definitely be managing somewhere again in baseball, probably like I said, in 2019.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure his name will be floated. You'll be hearing his name a lot throughout the summer this year for any team that has a manager in a hot seat. So he'll be mentioned in every single rumor. I mean, you mentioned it, all the playoff contention they were in this year with a team that didn't have very high expectations to get all the way to the ALCS and be just one win away from the World Series. I mean, he just did a wonderful job. And now they go over to Aaron Boone, and it's kind of a mystery what Aaron's going to do. We really don't know what his philosophy is at this point. We don't know how he's going to manage the game, manage the bullpen. Those are things we'll find out when we start playing some baseball games in March and into April, obviously. But it's an interesting move. It's a move that obviously signals that The front office has a lot more control, obviously, over a lot of things in baseball, especially with analytics. And it kind of just shows you that a lot of teams are willing to go with that young, cheap manager that they can, I don't want to say have some control, but have some say in when it comes to personnel matters.
I mean, it's not like Aaron Boone's is just this like voiceless puppet who's gonna be being told what to do by Brian Cashman. I mean, Aaron Boone was a pretty good baseball player, and to his credit, Aaron Boone has been around baseball his entire life. His father, Bob Boone, a former player and eventually former manager, and now Aaron is following in his father's footsteps. So, I mean, it's different, going from player to broadcaster to. But it's not like it's uncommon. I mean, you don't see it too much in actually, no, I can't say that because Bob Brenly did it with the Diamondbacks. Yeah. He did it in 2001. I mean, the more common one I've heard people tell me in recent times, Steve Kerr with the Warriors. Mm-hmm. Didn't really coach that much. Was broadcasting, and then immediately went to the Warriors. And look how that worked out for him. He's won two championships and could win a couple more. So I don't know if Aaron Boone's going to have that kind of success. But I mean, when he was the one that I heard, I wasn't like upset about it. I think he's actually going to do a really good job. He's a very smart person. Everybody that I ever talked to said that he's a very intelligent baseball person. Mm-hmm. Michael Kay gave him a very, very good review, saying he's a good person to have around for baseball. I think Brian Cashman's initial guy that he wanted for the job was Raul Ibanez, and Ibanez didn't want to leave the West Coast. He's got kids, and he didn't want to leave. He's working with the Dodgers doing, I don't know if it's scouting or something. But he didn't want to leave that job. So I think they kind of had to go to plan B. And I think Aaron Boone's going to do well at this. I think he's walking into a perfect situation, and I think he'll do well.
I mean, he is walked into a situation where he had obviously guys like I hear Carson in the background. He's walking into a perfect situation, and now he gets a chance to have Giancarlo Stanton in his lineup. I mean, you can't ask for better if you are a young manager starting out your career to have all these great players to put together. And you take a look at I look at that search, from Rob Thompson, who I thought would have been a strong candidate to possibly take the job. Obviously, he goes over to Philadelphia as the bench coach. I thought that was kind of somewhat disappointing because I think the Yankees would have liked to have had him stay as an assistant coach, possibly maybe as their bench coach, or maybe even stay as the third base coach, for that matter. And Carlos Beltran, I thought, really intrigued me because here's a guy who just retired. A lot of the Astro players loved the way he was an influence on them in the clubhouse. While he didn't get the Yankee job, I think his name is probably going to come up again at some point down the road, especially if he gets into some coaching.
I think Rob Thompson, going to the Phillies as a bench coach shot, I think this actually gets him promoted faster because Gabe Kapler is no guarantee to succeed in Philadelphia. And if Gabe Kapler struggles, and because Philly has gone through a couple managers very quickly, ever since Charlie Manuel left with Pete McKinnon, Ryan Sandberg, they didn't really work out. So if Gabe Kapler doesn't work out, I honestly think Rob Thompson gets shot up immediately, and I think he gets his chance to be a manager. So it stinks that he didn't get a chance after so many years with the Yankees, but I think Robbie Thompson eventually takes over that job, and if it doesn't work out with Kapler, I think that's his that'll be his first chance to be the manager.
Yeah, I'd like to see him get that opportunity because he's been in baseball a very long time. And I really thought he had a really good chance of getting that Yankee job. So maybe he'll get an opportunity at some point down the road. How about this with Machado? Now, it doesn't look like the Yankees are going to get him. Obviously, they are one of the teams that are a player for him at some point. The logic is, of course, the Orioles are not going to trade him within the division. That makes total sense. But they're in a position where they know he's going to be a free agent. They're going to want to move him at some point. I heard earlier today on the ESPN that there's talk now that they're just going to hold on to their chips with him and maybe try to move him by July, which certainly could happen at that point. What do you think is going on here with Machado, and where do you think is going to end up if they do trade him?
The team that's making the strongest push for him right now is the Chicago White Sox, but the problem is Chicago, I think, has made the strongest offer with a lot of prospects, but at the same time, their plan is they want to sign Machado long-term, and Machado reportedly has said that he does not want to sign an extension, and he wants to get the free agency. which is obviously going to drop the price on him. So Baltimore kind of has to weigh the options. I think it definitely lowers the price. They've got 5 teams in on him who have made offers and submitted trade proposals. But if they're not going to sign a contract extension, that kind of takes away some of the value they could have gotten if Machado was going to sign a long-term deal. I mean, I've heard the Yankees might have a strong offer, but the owner hates the Yankees, and it's almost like he has to wonder if he can even stomach sending one of his best players to within the division, and much less to the Yankees. So right now, because Machado is reportedly saying he might not send the extension with anybody, it makes it tough to deal with anybody. So I really don't know at this point. The one thing I reported last night was that the thing that's been talking about was they possibly could have swung a deal to send him to Chicago, and then Chicago turns Machado around and sends him to the Yankees and just builds up more of their farm system and gets more prospects for him. But Chicago said they wanted him as part of the long-term solution until Machado said he didn't want to sign anything long-term until next winter when he's a free agent. So, yeah, that kind of throws a monkey wrench into everything. So right now, I guess the logical thing would be that Machado maybe stays put for the time being.
Boy, that's gonna be tough. I mean, especially if we go into the season and Machado's still there, and let's just say the Orioles are sitting in last place in the AL East in June. And the Orioles are going to want to trade him, and he wants to wait until the winter. That's going to make things next to nearly impossible. It's going to make things really tough.
It makes trading a good player for a rental. It makes trying to get decent value back very, very difficult because teams don't want to give up to their best chips, and for a guy who's going to leave in 2.5 months. So Baltimore, unfortunately, they've got a tough decision to make in the next I guess you want to say the next 7 or 8 months. But this is not going to be easy for them because they run the risk of losing him and getting nothing for him if they don't trade him.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention, this is going to be the free agent class that we're heading into, where you're going to see Harper become available as well. So, these guys are going to start to reset this market to historic levels, and that's part of the reason why a lot of people love this Yankee deal with Stanton, because you get that big piece now, and you're basically paying him for a lot less, maybe even half of what someone like a Bryce Harper is going to be asking on the free agent market. That's what a lot of people have been pointing to as well.
I mean, they got Stanton and they're paying $265 million. I mean, that essentially could be $130 million less than what they would have had to shell out for Bryce Harper. And I mean, even if they want to go get Machado, I mean, who knows how much he's going to want? I mean, he could be looking at an A-Rod type deal himself. But even if they don't get either one, they still got Giancarlo Stanton for possibly $130 million less than what they had to shell out to get Bryce Harper.
Do you think that we're going to see I know the Yankees have been pushing this lately. Do you think we're going to see them push or try to get someone to get Jacoby Ellsbury? I know they've been pushing it for a while now since this trade. It just doesn't seem like he wants to go anywhere. It's a lot of money, $68 million. I think it's over 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but it's a lot of money. Yeah.
I mean, you would think that he would want to go somewhere and be the starting center fielder somewhere, and yet he's being so stubborn about waiving the no trade clause. I mean, the Yankees have already declared it that he is not starting anymore and he's going to be on the bench, and yet he seems like he doesn't want to leave New York. I mean, there's I could find 6 or 7 different trade partners for him just to move bad contract to bad contract alone, and every one of them, he would be the starting center fielder or a left fielder somewhere because of his skill set. And yet he's not even in the Yankees' plans he's basically the 25th, 5.5 man on this roster. And not even to that point, because I mean, last year he was basically the $153 million pinch runner. I mean, I really don't get he could start other places and play every day and not have to deal with, the New York media being on his case every day. And yet he just refuses to waive his no trade clause because I don't know if he just wants to ride the Yankees' coattail and get another ring while not doing much, or if he's under this impression that he might win the starting center field job back from Aaron Hicks in spring training. I really don't get Jacoby Ellsbury's thinking, because he's not going to start, and he's basically a useless player on the Yankees right now.
I mean, they got a logjam right now. You mentioned Hicks. You also have Brett Gardner, who is still in play as well, and he's a guy that could be in play for a trade at some point. I'd imagine that they're going to try to give Stanton some opportunities to play a little bit of left field. He's going to be their primary DH, but I'm sure he's going to get some left field opportunities as well. So, where you're going to play Ellsbury at this point, there's really nowhere to play him. And they're talking about bringing back Frazier at a reasonable contract. So you're going to have that. You got Torres at second base. There's really nowhere to put Jacoby Ellsbury anywhere on this field.
I mean, like I did an article this past week with different trade ideas, and I've said this for like 2.5 years because it's been brought up so many times by so many different media people. If the Yankees and the Mariners ever got together and traded Ellsbury for Robinson Cano, it would actually solve two issues right now, but both have no trade clauses, and Ellsbury being the one who wants to be the most difficult, not waiving it. You could trade him to the Giants and get Jeff Samardzija or Johnny Cueto. You could send him to Texas and get Sinso Chu. You could send him to Atlanta and get Matt Kemp. You could send him to all these different places and do bad contract for bad contract. Or you could send him to the Detroit Tigers and get Jordan Zimmerman. You could send him to all these different places and it would fit both teams' needs, and yet Jacoby Ellsbury seems content on being this fifth outfielder, basically, and just collecting a paycheck and riding the coattails of everybody else in front of him, unless for some reason he thinks he's just going to beat Aaron Hicks out for the starting center fielder job. Again, I do not get what he's thinking at all.
I don't either. I certainly don't see him beating out Hicks, especially Hicks coming off of a very good year last year, contributing both as a starter and off the bench, too. So I just don't see that happening at all. But the Yankees trying to put this team together. The pitching obviously is the forefront of their moves this offseason. Garrett Cole has been mentioned as a possibility. I even heard rumors of maybe the Yankees getting in touch with Arizona for Zach Greinke. I don't know how true that may be, but the two names I've heard the most, obviously from yourself as well as others, is Garrett Cole from Pittsburgh, also CeCe, what his situation is going to be. Now, CeCe is going to be tough because he's asking for, I think, somewhere between $10 to $12 million. I know the Angels were a potential suitor. Doesn't seem like that has gone very far since earlier in the week. So we'll see where the Yankees want to go with CeCe if they want to bring him back for less money. Obviously, it's going to have to be a hometown discount if they're going to bring him back next year.
Another team also in on CeCe. He met with the Toronto Blue Jays on Tuesday, so that's another team in the mix. The Yankees have been in on about 5 or 6 different starting pitchers. We talked. I mean, you mentioned Greinke. Don't expect that to happen.
No.
Zach Greinke did not want to be in New York to begin with. He didn't even want to be in Los Angeles when he was with the Dodgers and the Angels because he doesn't like the big media markets. I mean, that's why he went to Arizona and took their money as opposed to going to the Dodgers and competing for a World Series.
Right.
Now you're mentioning like Garrett Cole. I mean, there's also Michael Fulmer of the Tigers, who they've been on. Danny Duffy from the Royals. Also Patrick Corbin from the Diamondbacks. So they've been inquiring on a lot of pitchers, and most of them, aside from Greinke, most of them have been younger, affordable, and controllable starters that they can keep around for a while and get into the rotation. So, I mean, they do want CeCe back. I think the biggest hiccup or the biggest thing is that I think CeCe wants a second year, and I think the Yankees want to at least go the Andy Pettitte route and give him 1 year and see where he goes after that. But, I mean, I would say 50-50 CeCe comes back, but it really depends on how well Brian Cashman can maneuver the trade market for a starter. I mean, unfortunately, if you're trying to trade for a controllable young starting pitcher, it does cost a lot because pitching is always going to cost a lot in the trade market. So I think CeCe is right now the fallback, almost kind of a priority because, I mean, I think he would want to have him back just for the veteran presence, and he's a lefty. And he went 14-5 with a 3 ERA last year. So I think he definitely wants to see if he can get him back. But at the same time, he definitely wants to think about the rotation going forward and trying to get some younger arms into it.
Absolutely. And I look at the rotation right now. Obviously, Severino leading the rotation, had a great year last year. Really no concerns there. He really stepped up, especially in the second half of the year with all the injuries that were occurring on the rotation. Tanaka had that great postseason last year. I'll be very curious to see what the Yankees get out of Sonny Gray this year. Now be his first full season. Had 11 starts last year. It was kind of shaky. Went 4-7. We'll see what he can do this year. Maybe more as a 4-starter. And I'm really curious to see what Jordan Montgomery can develop into. He had a lot of good moments at times last year. Struck out 144 and 155 innings. It'll be interesting to see his development moving forward into year 2. So, to me, you want to get at least one starter. You can never have enough starting pitching, so maybe if you can get 2, that'll be perfect if you're the Yankees going into the season.
Yeah, I think Sonny Gray will do. I think because now he'll be in his first full year now in year 2 with the Yankees. I think he'll be fine. I mean, it's different going from Oakland to the Yankees, and he doesn't have to be the ace in New York. And he's got Severino and Tanaka in front of him. So, I mean, granted he had a 4-7 record, but his ERA was actually really good. And he didn't really get much run support. So I think if he gets a little bit more run support, I think you'll see a better record for him. But I mean, as we've seen in baseball over the years, a win-loss record is kind of deceptive because, I mean, you could have like a 6-9 record and yet throw 200 innings, throws 200 strikeouts, and your offense didn't score for you. So I think Sonny Gray will be fine going forward in New York.
Yeah, I got to move over and say this about the Mets because I know that Sandy Alderson spoke up about the Giancarlo trade earlier in the week, and he tried to make a joke out of it by mentioning Brandon Nimmo, saying that we didn't, why would we want to go out there and trade for Giancarlo Stanton when we have Brandon Nimmo? You know what? There was no reason for the Mets to go out there and make a trade for Giancarlo Stanton. There was really no reason to think that they would even put themselves in that position. For Sandy Alderson to go out there and to make a joke out of it and make a joke out of the Mets payroll situation and the fact that they do not spend enough money or much money at all on free agents and in trades really was kind of a slap in the face of the Met fans. It really was. And I really wish that he had kept his mouth shut and not mentioned Giancarlo Stanton at all. And if he had been asked about it, just said, acknowledged it, said congratulations to the Yankees, and moved on, said, look, we got a bunch of deals that we're working on, or potential deals we're trying to work on here for our team. Something to that effect. Instead, he brings up the fact that the Mets don't go out there and make a trade. Really makes a joke out of it. It really was insulting in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough being a Met fan watching what the Yankees are doing, and your biggest free agent signing is Anthony Swarzak right now. I mean, I think the theme of the Mets winter so far is I really hope he will go to or I hope the Mets will do something.
Yeah.
And they don't do anything. And I know it's frustrating because, I mean, you're in a New York market, you're in New York town, and you're basically playing second fiddle to the other team that watches their general manager go get the National League MVP, and you're getting a reliever, and you're just doing nothing. And it's frustrating. I mean, I know they're tied to a few people, and I know it's has to be frustrating to see Ian Kinsler, who was linked to the Mets, and apparently he wouldn't waive his no trade clause to go to the Mets, and instead he accepts the trade to the Angels. So I know it's got to be a frustrating time and frustrating offseason for the Mets, who a lot of fans were hoping that they would upgrade the catcher position, first base, and maybe third base, and maybe an outfielder. And right now it's kind of sitting around and just waiting for Sandy Alderson to do something, and you're watching people just get traded left and right, and you're kind of left there just holding the bag.
Yeah, I mean, it's all been just talk. There's been talk about the Mets, talking to Todd Frazier, of course, hasn't gone anything farther than just talk. Talk about maybe bringing in Jay Bruce. I don't see Jay Bruce going back to the Mets. I mean, I know that there are a lot of Met fans who would like to see him come back, especially coming off the big year he had last year. I just don't know if he's going to want to come back to Queens and go from being where he was on a contending team like Cleveland and then go all the way back to the Mets, who are not contending right now. I just don't see that happening. Jason Kipnis, I think, is a really interesting piece. Obviously, that would have to require a trade with Cleveland. Now, he is coming off of a season plagued by hamstring injuries. Do the Indians feel he has nothing left at this point? I don't know. And if he were to come here, I think that it would certainly solve their second base problem and would give them a player who, when he's healthy, can provide a little bit of pop, obviously can hit for some average when he is healthy, but that's really the more intriguing piece. It probably would make a lot of Met fans a little more happier if they can pull that one off. Other than that, it's a team that has bad contracts with David Wright, bad contracts with Yoenis Cespedes. Cespedes coming off of his hamstring injury, the situation with Matt Harvey, and whether the Mets are going to trade him this offseason or wait until sometime in the season when he's pitching, if he pitches well, to try to increase his value. That's what it's really about. It's just kind of clearing payroll again for a team that thought it had cleared all the payroll just a few years ago before that World Series trip.
It's a lot of what ifs, and it's like hoping that maybe they'll find the form of 2015 all over again. Yeah. But I mean, 2015 seems like a long time ago, given the way things happened, last year and the year before. And, it's just kind of like the Mets right now are kind of like this wait and see mode. I know they've, the players you mentioned before, I think Kipnis is a possibility, but other than that, I mean, they haven't really been linked to too many other players. And if they have, they've already come off the board, whether it's a trade or a free agent signing. So right now it's basically the Mets theme is just wait and see, and maybe they'll do something, but who knows at this point what Sandy's got planned for the rest of the offseason.
The last baseball thing I want to bring up, and then I want to just very, very quickly jump to the Giants because there's been a lot of talk there as well. Ohtani getting diagnosed with this UCL injury. Now, from everything I've read is that he could play through that he had a procedure, an injection made when he was in Japan, and that he could play through it. They don't think that's going to require Tommy John surgery right now, but that doesn't mean it's not impossible. So it just goes to show you what a gamble it is when you go out there and pick up these players from these foreign countries. You really don't know what you're getting, really, for that matter, until it happens.
I mean, they get overworked in basically Japan, and I mean, I think a lot of teams that weren't the Angels, I think they have to probably feel a big sigh of relief that they didn't make an investment to get Ohtani, especially the Yankees, who Brian Cashman said he wanted to get him and put him as a pitcher and a hitter. And I mean, a lot of fans were disappointed at the time, but now looking back, everyone I think breathes a sigh of relief that they basically avoided potential disaster and dodged a bullet with Ohtani, because who knows what. I mean, it's not a tear; it's a strain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he could maybe just rest it. Maybe he's ready for the season, but that's a big maybe to kind of hope that for the Angels that maybe he'll be ready, or maybe he has to have surgery and we don't see him for another 12 to 14 months. So it's now the Angels' problem. It's not anybody else's.
Not anybody else's. That's a team that has a history of some big contracts over the years. I mean, you got Albert Pujols at the end of his career. And the guy I feel the most bad for is Trout, because here's one of the best players in the sport. Guy's an MVP candidate almost every single year. Nobody sees this guy play because the Angels have been so bad in recent years, and he is just waiting to be a free agent and have an opportunity to play for somebody and get some attention, because he's one of the best players in the sport. I would love to see the Angels just get to the playoffs, even just once, just to showcase this guy. I really would.
I mean, they got to the playoffs in 2014, and they got swept by the Kansas City Royals. I mean, ever since then, they've just been a lot of bad baseball, and unfortunately for them, their farm system was one of the worst in baseball for a good while before Brian Cashman's former assistant general manager took over that general manager job, and just been kind of trying to fix a lot of the messes that the previous guys made there. But yeah, I mean, Trout's, he's loyal. He's very loyal, but he's stuck in a very, very bad situation out there in L.A.
He really is. Talking here with Doug Rush on the Open Mic program, Sports Talk Nation on the YouTube channel. Glad you're joining us here, folks. Last thing let's cover here, Doug. Of course, we were talking about the winter meetings going on right now in baseball. Just turn it over to football just for a minute, and that is on, of course, your team, the New York Giants, who have made a lot of headlines over the last couple of weeks, with Ben McAdoo being relieved of his duties, as well as Jerry Reese, Steve Spagnuolo, an interim head coach, and a lot of talk now about David Gettleman, the former Panthers executive, coming in and taking over. So that's going to be quite intriguing. Now, he has some experience with the Giants, having been an executive in the front office for many years. And I also read today that John Mara may want Eli to stay. So just on some of those things, what are your thoughts about what's going on there with the Giants?
Dave Gettleman is definitely the front runner.
Yeah.
I know they want to talk to a couple people who are with playoff teams or potential playoff teams, a couple of the people that you might see. Nick Caserio, who is an executive with the Patriots, Elliot Wolf, who is an executive with the Packers. But a lot of people feel like Dave Gettleman is the front runner because he has experience as a previous general manager. And before then, he spent a good, must have been 14, 15 years with the Giants as an executive working under the general managers. And the fact that Ernie Accorsi is running the search for the general manager goes very well for Gettleman, because it was Ernie Accorsi who made the recommendation for Gettleman in Carolina. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the one factor that works against Gettleman, he's 66, which is also the same age that Ernie Accorsi was when he stepped down as the general manager in January 2007. But, Gettleman, wants to be a general manager again. He kind of got forced out of Carolina because he got rid of a lot of popular players that were popular with the fans and the media. He basically kicked Josh Norman to the curb. Yeah. And a lot of people ran him out of town for but I mean, he was a successful general manager there who got the Panthers within, a Super Bowl victory. And he got them to the Super Bowl within 2 years of running that team. And for the long term, he also signed Cam Newton and Luke Kuechly to their long-term deals. So he set up Carolina for a lot of success and kept a lot of their core players while getting rid of some of the players they didn't really need. I honestly think he will be the guy, unless one of these other guys that are a little bit younger and looking for their first general manager gig just kind of blow the interview right out of the water and kind of wow John Mara into hiring him. But my gut says Gettleman probably is the next general manager.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. Sometimes it's good to go with an experienced guy, especially a guy that you kind of have some familiarity with, and that's what the Giants have, and they're an organization that's always gone about by making moves in-house for the most part, bringing in guys that they are very familiar with, even with Machado for that matter. A guy that guy was the offensive coordinator. We're afraid that he was going to leave for Philadelphia, be their head coach, and then, of course, we all know they made him the head coach, and that become infamy. But the fact is, they usually do make moves in-house. That's just the way the Giants have been over the years, maybe with the exception of Dan Reeves for that matter. But for you, if you were John Mara right now, and you're looking for that head coach, who would be your guy right now? That's the big question right now.
All right. So I know a lot of people disagree with me on this. I mean, the Giants are a mess, and if you look at their track record, when they fire a coach after a mess, and one that was kind of like considered the hot assistant, they kind of go after they fire the hot assistant, they go towards the established guy. So if you look back at the history, they fire Ray Hanley, they hire Dan Reeves. Yeah. They fire Jim Fossil, they hire Tom Coughlin. Now they fired Ben McAdoo. I don't think Spagnuolo is going to be the guy going forward, unfortunately. I like Spags. It's just I think they needed a more established guy than Spags. So I mean, I know a lot of people have said he's not coming back to coaching. I've been on the Bill Cowher train for about 6 years now. They never called him in 2015, 2016 because I think they had Ben McAdoo set as the coach. I would at least call him just to see, hey, are you really done coaching, or maybe do you want to come and fix this mess here? If Cowher really is done coaching, and a lot of people feel like he might be, then I don't want John Gruden because I feel like John Gruden's overrated, and I've said that for many, many years. I think they need an established guy. I don't want Josh McDaniels because I feel like Josh McDaniels benefits from Bill Belichick. Yeah. All the New England assistants don't do well away from New England. So, and plus I think McDaniels is going to take over New England once Belichick retires. Two guys to potentially look at. I mean, I know they're not marquee names, but they're been head coaches in the past. One is Mike Smith, who used to be the Atlanta Falcons head coach. He was the runner-up in the first time when they let go of Coughlin. He initially, if they didn't hire Ben McAdoo, Mike Smith could have been this Giants head coach, and things could be a lot more different now. So I look for Mike Smith, who is the defensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. He might, that whole staff might get blown up because they've been so bad this year. And the other one that I've been hearing a lot of rumors on is Jim Schwartz, who's the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, who was previously the Detroit Lions head coach. Has done a very, very good job in reestablishing himself as a good defensive coordinator. Philadelphia's defense has done very well this year, and plus as a division rival, maybe the Giants try to look to hurt them, and by taking away their top defensive assistant. So I think they have to go established. I mean, those are two potential names. I mean, who knows who else they might look at, but yeah, I don't think the Giant job is such a big one that I don't think you can go and let's give the top hot assistant coach their first try, like they did with Ben McAdoo.
Yeah,
because it ended in such a disaster, you have to give this job to an established guy who's going to have to try to restore order and fix all the messes and all the just total dumpster fire that Ben McAdoo did. Especially that, I mean, 11-5, great the first year, but he made such a mess this year. And it's just, the Giants don't like to fire guys within 2 years, but he literally bordered on being worse than Ray Handley, and he had to go. And now the next head coach has to fix his mess.
I think of all those names that you mentioned, the one name that I like the most is probably Mike Smith, because he has a very good track record of success in Atlanta, took that team to an NFC Championship game, and while he is a defensive coach, he is the guy that certainly helped bring in Matt Ryan into Atlanta. So if you're a team like the Giants who is looking to move on to the next chapter of quarterbacks, for that matter, and with all these potentially big-name quarterbacks coming out of college, maybe Mike Smith is that guy you would want to have as a head coach to work with one of these young kids that comes into the team if they do draft a Sam Darnold or a Josh Rosen or even a Jared Allen if they wanted to do that, go that route too.
I'd be perfectly fine if Mike Smith was the team set, because ultimately I said he was the runner-up. He impressed 2 years ago, and ultimately if they don't get scared off by the Eagles trying to get McAdoo, he could have been this team's head coach, and I think he deserves another chance to try to, win the job again. So, yeah, I mean, if he is a candidate, I hope he does well, and maybe he gets he's also very much like Tom Coughlin. I know they're very good friends, and he's not as much of a disciplinarian as Coughlin was during his heyday, but he's got a lot of Coughlin-like, traits and characteristics, and I think he would do well if he were the head coach for the Giants. Yeah,
it's kind of funny because I had this conversation with another Giants fan at work, and he says, maybe we should go get Josh McDaniels, and I'm like, you really want Josh McDaniels? He's like, what's wrong with McDaniels? I said, Josh McDaniels was Ben McAdoo before Ben McAdoo was Ben McAdoo. I mean, you really don't like.
Oh my God, he destroyed everything that Mike Shanahan did in Denver. He just completely destroyed it and literally just ran himself out of Denver, just like Ben McAdoo ran himself out of New York.
Yep.
Just basically, and Josh McDaniels had to spend many years being an offensive coordinator to reestablish himself. And I mean, I'm sure Josh McDaniels will be a head coach again. I just feel like Josh McDaniels is waiting for the Patriots job and will wait as long as he needs to and wait out Bill Belichick to get that job. I don't think he's coming to New York.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I agree with you. I think he's going to be eventually the Patriots head coach when Bill Belichick retires, which will be probably the same time Tom Brady retires, which will be when Tom Brady is 75 years old, probably.
At this rate, yeah.
He'll be 75 years old, and he'll still have the best record in the AFC East.
And they'll still be winning. They'll be still, coasting to the AFC Championship games.
Yeah, that's just the way it rolls in the AFC. And the Jets will be on their 157th quarterback by that point.
Yep.
Pretty much. Anyway, Doug, I want to thank you so much, man, for coming on board. Again, I wish you and your family happy holidays at this time of the year, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike, and happy holidays to you, and we will talk very soon.
All right. Folks, that's Doug Rush. Glad to have him back aboard to talk some baseball with us, as well as a little bit of football. Remember to follow us on social media, at OpenMikeNJ on Twitter, as well as Facebook.com/OpenMikeProgram, and hit that like and subscribe button right here on the Sports Talk Nation on YouTube. We're going to have a lot of videos, going to have a lot of episodes coming out in the next couple of weeks here. So we'll talk to you next time, right here on the Open Mike Program.